Hey, everybody, welcome to the True Crime Squad. I'm Christy Brower, here with my sister, co host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey, Katie,
Hello.
how's it going?
Well, it's going good. We got our favorite camping spot. By God,
Yes, we did.
we pulled
You
our
guys are
camper
the
up there
best.
today. Oh, I was so happy. I was so scared. It's a really narrow road, and by
Mhm.
pulling your camper on it is a little bit dicey. And then there was some guy that had pulled over and was fishing. Like Mars and I were both hanging out the window to make sure that the side of the camper and pickup tires weren't getting too close to falling into the river. Like it was
Lord.
crazy. And Scott's like, if that spot's not available, we're really screwed. I don't know what we're going to do. so,
Right to have to come back through there. Ugh.
yeah, he's like, we're not doing that again. But yeah, so anyway, but thank God, yeah, the spot was empty and available. So,
Good news. You just don't know here what it's like
mm-mm,
to get a good spot, a good non campground kind of spot
mm-hmm,
for the weekend before the 4th of July. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
it's
battle.
going to be insane. Yeah. So anyway, we're thrilled. We're beyond
Yes.
thrilled. And man, is
Yes.
it gorgeous up there. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Cannot wait.
Yeah.
Well, it is. Oh boy, both my cats are in the room with me tonight, so you might really they're fighting with each other right now. That's why this one's up here on my chair. So you might really get a show. I don't know what's going on, but this is our Wednesday night case updates live stream, and do we have some updates for you?
Oh man,
But
there's a lot going on.
we're going to get to the important ones, but I think we should get to the funniest one first, which is top of the FOS list, the number one jackass, Nick Alaverdian. Please give
Oh
us the news,
my
Katie.
God, you guys, I'm dead reading this today. So this is Nick. You guys, I'm sure you remember him. We've talked about him into infinitum.
Yes, we have.
I noticed that somebody from like, I don't know, CNN or Dateline just received a big award for all of their work they've done on this case. And I'm like, what? Excuse me. I think we're the first podcasters to talk about it, but
I
whatever.
think so.
We'll just be over here doing our work. Uh,
Mhm.
but so he is finally in his extradition hearing. It's finally happening. It started last week. It's carried over into this week. And as we know, his name is actually uh, Nicholas Alaverdian or Nicholas Rossi. He went by both, but he's
Mhm.
claiming to be, uh,
Arthur Knight.
yeah,
Is that
Arthur
right? Or
Knight from
yeah.
an orphan, handily from Ireland, and he faked his death in New Hampshire while he was actually already living in the UK, and then of course has been there ever since, and got COVID last year, well 2 years ago, 18 months ago now. Ended up in the hospital, and they recognized his tattoos from a most wanted list because, the feds never really fell for that, oh, I'm dead routine, considering that there was no death certificate ever.
No, and he's facing rape charges and financial crimes, all kinds of
Hmm.
stuff in the US, and he just conveniently dies. Yeah, okay,
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's taken 18 months now of during the extradition process, and some kind of hilarious things coming out of it. They've got, of course, all of these testifying, witnesses testifying on both sides, but they had a doctor today, a UK doctor, who has fully examined him, and he says that his oxygen is that of a healthy person. He doesn't need oxygen, and he
Does it need those
also
fake oxygen masks he's been wearing?
those CPAP masks he's wearing around. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
just
they're not even real oxygen masks. I don't even think they're attached to anything.
yeah.
It's just so
No,
stupid.
it's a front, and also I know, surprise. Also, they said there's absolutely nothing wrong with him physically that would make him need to be in that wheelchair. Not quite as sickly and disabled as he's trying to pretend. Which, honestly, how ableist of you, Nicholas? Really?
Right.
Some people really need
Just
that wheelchair,
kidding.
and your fat ass is sitting in it pretending to be someone you're not. Get up, get out of there, come to Utah.
Yes, please come to
Come to
Utah
Utah.
because we want to go to your hearings really bad.
There's a bit of of a hitch. And the hitch is that he has been accused of rape in England.
Right.
So he's in Scotland having this hearing, but he has not been interviewed by the Essex police.
Oh,
And mhm, and the defense, of course, they're like, "Oh, well, in that case, he needs to just be released until the police speak with him about the rape allegations here. So let's just let him
released.
go home.
Sure. You mean there's more charges pending against him? Let's let him go.
Let him go." That
I'm
seems
sure he's not a
to
flight
do.
risk.
Well, there was some talk that the UK would never be able to release him until they satisfied those charges. Uh,
Right.
However, that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. Um, so they're just working on clearing that up. I don't know that I feel like that's something that's going to keep him from being extradited, and it's certainly not something that's going to get him released for Christ's sake. But yeah, but he does have rape charges in England because he's a rapist. He has
Right.
multiple rape charges and convictions here in the United States.
Yes.
So yeah. Paula said, as someone who uses a wheelchair, I assure you it's not always the most comfortable seat in the house, right? And he's
I
pretending
can
like he
imagine.
needs it, but he's just doing it to get favor from the court or trying to. But
He is such a faker, such a
well,
jackass.
he's claiming it's all from COVID, that he has long COVID and he can't breathe and he can't walk and his life is destroyed. And now he's being accused of being this person he isn't. The
Oh,
problem is DNA
where
and
where
fingerprints
are my
and
clutching
tattoos.
pearls when I need them?
You guys, he actually tried to claim that the hospital set him up by putting all of those foreign tattoos he's never seen before on his arms while he was in a coma.
Can you imagine? They just look, we're going to set this dude up for crimes he committed in another country by
Right? For no reason
tattooing
at
him
all.
while he's
You're like,
under.
hey, this guy has COVID. He's in a coma in the ICU. This would be a great time to cover him in tattoos.
Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly the first priority in the ICU.
And everybody knows that ICU nurses are also tattoo artists. I mean, come on,
Right.
man. Oh, I don't know, Cranky. I'm kind of glad COVID didn't do the job because I've enjoyed this immensely. Uh, and
We
when
just
he is
want to see
extradited to
him get
Utah,
some real comeuppance.
yes, when he's extradited to Utah, we have every intention of attending his hearing because
Yeah.
that's correct. We really want to be there. Yeah,
Yes.
hospital staff have all this time to tattoo people, especially
Right.
ones that are critically ill in the ICU, in comas.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea. So, anyway, the verdict is in from the doctor. You're a big faker.
Hmm.
Well, we already knew that, but come on, Nick. You've wasted enough time. Come on back to the States. It's time.
Yeah, come on. We want you to get some justice here. We want your victim in Utah to get some justice. We want
Victims.
victims, right? Well, we want the
Now
ones in the
there's more
UK to
than
get
one charge. Yeah.
right. We want that victim in the UK to get justice too. This has taken so stupidly long.
Hmm.
And you remember he's been being tortured in jail uh, by the inmates singing songs to him, which
That's
has been
right.
very upsetting and difficult and damaging to his psyche. So,
Well, I mean, the song, it's so
yeah,
cruel.
yeah.
Leaving on a jet plane. How cruel. How
Yeah,
unkind. That's
I cannot
bullying, I
imagine.
tell you. Wow, this shirt
That
is
is bullying
really
in a UK
wrinkled.
prison, apparently, in a Scotland prison. Um,
Yeah.
he is really in big trouble in the US.
Just the one John Denver song, Leaving on a
Yeah,
Jet
leave him on
Plane.
a jet plane. That's what they were singing at him because he's getting extradited.
That's another reason why he should have been released. How long has he been wanted, Gloria? About 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 3 years. It's not a super long time. But he also,
No, but it is
one of his
time.
crimes here in the US was fraud against his stepfather, who is going
Mhm.
to be testifying against him in this extradition hearing, to help prove that he is exactly who the authorities say he is. But he committed fraud on him, took out credit cards in his name, and ran up a bill of over $200,000.
Yeah.
It was 20 credit cards. Yeah.
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 He's such a jackass.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I love this. I'm hoping they will take that stupid wheelchair away from him now that this doctor has
Right.
testified.
That's it.
Yeah. You
All
don't
done
get to
with
keep
this.
this.
Mhm. Well, he's putting on quite the show with the whole oxygen mask thing too.
And all hunched
Anyway,
over, and yeah, it's really dumb.
yeah. It would
Right,
be
it
quite
does
a
sound like
movie.
a movie. It
Yeah.
it would. There should be a movie, of this, really,
Mhm.
because of the hijinks that he's gotten up to.
It's really true. Why why would the hospital or the conspiracy within the hospital be so anxious to put tattoos on Arthur Knight of all people, who is just happens to be this demure, kind, shy, quiet Irishman living in Scotland and married to a very nice wife? Why would they do that?
Right. Why would they do that? Unless he was, in fact, a super bad guy.
Maybe he's a spy.
Don't think so. I
Maybe he's
think he
just Nick
wants to
Alaverdian.
seem like he's cool, but he is not.
No.
Gosh, there's so much to talk about, but let's talk about Kohberger.
Mm.
Guess who's getting the death penalty in Idaho if he's convicted? Brian Kohberger. I know.
Well, I'll tell you who isn't.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Not surprising. We all figured that.
No.
You know, they literally did the new bill that did get enacted to reinstate the firing squad, literally with Kohberger in mind.
Mhm.
Which, you know, now our state gets to spend a bajillion dollars building a special facility to use to
Mhm.
execute people by firing squad. Here's the other thing, though, because in Idaho, if someone is convicted and on death row, they get to choose how they are executed. So
Mhm.
Kohberger doesn't have to choose that if, in fact, he is, um, found guilty and given it.
Mhm.
But here's a newsflash: we don't have a facility that doesn't even exist yet. They've passed the stupid law, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's gross. The whole that just makes me sick. It just makes me feel sick to think about it. Like they
Mhm.
passed a law thinking about wanting to kill this particular person.
Yeah.
Look, he, is alleged to have done some really horrible things. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But that's just really barbaric.
Mhm.
But they did the prosecution did come out and say, "Yep, we are going to go for the death penalty."
Yeah.
There's been some news that isn't really news come out this past week about that they have confirmed his DNA on the knife sheath. Now,
Mhm.
we already knew that, but they've run it again to uh, confirm the DNA match because initially it was a genealogical match because they had his dad's DNA from some trash that they found at their house when the house was being surveilled.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's not like there's been any question, but now that's been confirmed that yes, the DNA that they have on the knife sheath that was left in the house on the bed,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, where two of the victims were, has in fact been proven to be his,
Yeah.
which is pretty damning evidence. You know, the defense attorneys are saying there's absolutely no connection between him and the victims, except for that part where his DNA is in their house.
Mhm.
It's a little hard to. There's a lot of stuff going on right now with his defense that we have to remember that the defense's job is to create doubt.
Mhm.
So they're doing all kinds of stuff that doesn't really literally actually mean anything in court. And
Mhm.
a lot of it's not provable. And when it comes right down to trial, they're just trying to garner support and sympathy right now.
Mhm.
The whole thing that they're fighting over with the grand jury and how they want to, impeach how the grand jury was seated and the way that they were done and all that stuff. Well, they've never even seen the documents yet that tell them how that was done.
Right.
How the grand jury was seated. So that's just all noise. Like
Yeah.
don't forget that the defense is going to say all kinds of stuff that they cannot actually prove.
Sure.
And you can't prove that the grand jury was seated inappropriately if you've never even seen the documentation about how it was seated.
Right.
So you can say that to the press all you want, but is that provable information? No.
Unlikely. I mean, what one thing we've learned over the years is how much defense attorneys hate grand juries.
Yes, they do. Well, because it's completely out of their control. They don't get to be
Mhm.
there. They don't get to hear what was said or who was called. And
They
yeah, they
likely
do
don't
hate
even know
them.
it's happening.
Yes, they don't. Yeah, that they and these guys are pissed because they were prepping for the preliminary hearing that should have happened like 3 days ago.
Mhm.
But it didn't because
They
this
went the grand
happened.
jury route instead, yeah. Tore it out of their hands.
Yeah. So, I've seen a lot of kind of panicked stuff with people. Remember, this is their job.
Mhm.
They're the defense. They're creating doubt because remember, you have to find someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It's in the language. So they're
Mhm.
creating doubt because they are hoping that, the jury won't be able to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what they say in the press. It doesn't because it's not provable information.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. And the case needs to be dropped. They're going to give all the reasons. They're going to give all the everything about why this should be done this way or that way. And it just doesn't matter. It's they're going to say all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
So we don't have to focus too heavily on it, I think.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. The other thing is that we learned that Kohberger was actually arrested for the first time in 2014
Mhm.
for stealing his sister's cell phone.
Yeah.
And this has really set people off in a big way about, smaller crimes lead to bigger crimes. And I don't know. I think it's a really big leap from stealing your sister's iPhone to murdering four people. Does
Especially
it
because
was it
his dad's the one that turned him in.
right? His dad turned him
His
in.
family held him accountable,
Yeah.
but
He
they
was
also
charged
say he
with
was a
misdemeanor
heroin
theft.
addict at the time.
Right, yeah, he was. He was a heroin addict and he was, trying to get drug money.
Mhm.
Um I don't know. I'm not sure it's as significant as some people are saying that it is.
I just feel
But
like people are so reactionary in this case.
it's
I almost
right.
can't stand to be on Twitter around the Kohberger people.
I
And
know.
honestly, and you guys have probably noticed that we have not been all over this case like we typically are Idaho cases. And a lot of it is because of the way it's been handled by other true crimers and the press. It has been
It's
gross
so
and too much.
sensationalized.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
so outrageous and knee jerky. And I mean, partly we've been knee deep in De Belvallo, but at the same time, like, God, it has sucked. The coverage of
Yeah.
it has been really, really gross. The way the families have been treated has been so gross. I actually saw someone on Twitter this week saying that if the families are allowed into the courtroom, they should submit to being handcuffed.
What?
Yeah,
If number 1, they will
yeah,
front row seats, number 2, they are not charged with any crimes.
yeah, yeah,
Right, Cranky. There's not a lot to report until it goes to trial, particularly because of this gag order that
yeah.
has held back the actual information.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we have ignored a lot of really sensational stuff because
Hmm.
there's no way to prove any of it,
And
but
we're
when
going to
they're
continue
actually in
to.
court,
Yeah,
yeah, when they're actually in court and actual real things get discussed, that makes that's more important, in the release now that they have verified the DNA, which is
yeah.
great, but it's not like that's real bombshelly either. I mean, everywhere I saw
No.
all these clickbaity headlines, bombshell information in the Brian Kohberger case. No, it isn't. They knew that DNA match before they arrested him. They
Right,
just are confirming it now. Like, let's not get too crazy.
right. Well,
Right,
they
right. They
got
just
to
wanna
it.
talk and get views, and it's
Yeah.
hard because it is way hard when a case you're covering is gagged, because you do go long periods of time without a lot of information, but I'm
But
very
I
tired
don't
of them
know.
making up
Maybe cover
stuff.
something else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we
Or
cover multiple cases.
hounding the hell out of the victims' families.
Yeah, but saying things like that about the families, that's
Oh,
horrible. Of
people are
course
out of
they'll
their
be at the trial.
minds.
They have every right to be at the trial. Of course
Absolutely.
they'll
And they
be there, and of
sure
course
don't
they
have to submit to being handcuffed.
No, my god.
What the hell is
What is
wrong
the
with
matter with
people?
people?
Yeah.
Ugh.
A lot of things. A lot
Many
of
things. The
things.
list is very long, and we
Mhm.
will cover some of those, but not all of them because that just cannot. I don't know. We can't cover it all in one night. That's for sure. But you will probably have noticed that we don't always cover everything with Kohberger, and that's why. But
Mhm.
really, the big news is yes, they are seeking the death penalty,
Yeah, that is the biggest news.
and
If
we
he already
know
has 2 death penalty certified attorneys, which, as you know,
he
in
does.
Idaho is a stretch of our resources.
Yeah.
So
Well, and they've been prepping it this way, expecting that that was coming. And that changes the way that the trial is run. There are
mhm,
basically two trials, right? Because
mhm,
there's the guilt phase, and then there's the penalty phase. So it's a bigger thing. It's a longer trial.
it
It
changes the way the
means,
jury is
yep,
selected.
changes the way the jury is selected. It changes a lot of things, and it makes it more complicated and more drawn out.
Mhm,
So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see, this get pushed out a couple of times
mhm.
because there is so much that has to be done when the death penalty is on the table.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to watch this case because Kohberger's response to his charges are so different from Lori Vallow's responses to her charges. Lori just didn't really give her defense attorneys anything to work with.
No.
Kohberger, on the other hand, is fighting everything tooth and nail,
Mhm.
which of course is his right.
And
Um,
also his education. You have
mhm.
to remember, he has a master's degree in criminology.
Yeah, he does.
Which, I as a side note, I thought might have made him a better criminal than he was, but okay.
I
Uh,
think he
it's
thought he was
fine.
a better criminal than he is.
Has he made a
No,
speedy trial? No, he's not.
I don't think he. Well,
Uh-huh. I
I
didn't
think
think he had,
he
but
did.
hmm,
I'm gonna check because we're covering too many of these, and that question gets murky for me.
it does. Yeah.
But um,
But definitely his attorneys are putting up a much more robust defense than Lori's attorneys did.
yes,
Wow.
he waived his right.
He did.
He
Okay.
waived his right. So we've got a lot of time, and
Mhm.
it's going to take a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
Right, Lori's delusions are telling her that God is going to step in and fix all of this for her, so she doesn't really have to defend herself.
Mhm.
Kohberger knows he has to defend himself, and he
Mhm.
knows the system well enough to know that this is how you do it, and you
Mhm.
fight everything tooth and nail. And
Mhm.
it means it takes a lot longer, which is why you would waive speedy trial so that you can fight every single little tiny procedural thing.
To be a fly on the wall in his cell, in his
Mhm.
conversations with his attorneys,
Right.
because I can only imagine how much input he is giving, accurate input that he is giving. I suspect that there's a lot of that going on, that he has a
Yeah.
lot to say. Hi, Rain Rose. Good to see you.
I'm
She's from
sure that he
our
does.
most loved state of Florida.
Well, I'm
We're
glad that you're
Florida.
safe and alive living in that insane place. And that's
We do
coming
pick
from
on Florida
Idaho,
a
honey.
lot.
Well, welcome. We're really glad that you could be here live.
Yes, we are. And that you don't
Right.
hate us for all the shit we talk about Florida.
We just tell the truth. We know.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
oh, Grant
Oh,
is
Grant
also in
is too?
Florida. You are, yeah, let's, right, Cranky. Brian doesn't have a golden vagina on his side.
Right.
Correct. Neither does Lori anymore. But
Yeah.
watching these two cases play out in the same state is really interesting because the difference in defense is so
Staggering.
blindingly different.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. He's still going to try to outsmart everyone. Definitely. That's what Kober's ego is all about, is that
Yeah.
he's the smartest, he's the best, he knows more than everybody.
Mhm.
Leaving behind that knife sheath was probably proof that that's not actually true.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what's going on with him.
Mhm.
Let's see, Katie. Some interesting releases actually in the Suzanne Morphew case. Want to tell us about
Huge
that?
unsealings in Suzanne Morphew. So this is
Oh,
Suzanne.
yes, and ceilings, yeah.
If you guys remember, Suzanne went missing out of Colorado a few years ago. She went missing Mother's Day weekend 2020.
Yeah.
And she'd only lived in Colorado for 2 years. They'd moved there from, Indiana, and they have just, released a bunch of sensitive documents that are giving us a pretty good picture of what was going on that really does shadow some doubt back on her husband, Barry. Now, Barry was charged with her murder, way too soon. And then the prosecution
Yeah.
just bungled the holy hell out of his case until they finally
So
really had
bad.
no choices but to just dismiss the charges without
Mhm.
prejudice so they could charge him again. But the
Right.
case has just kind of settled since then. He has filed a $15 million suit against the county. Like, you
Yeah.
know, but some things in the new documents that came out that are really curious. Most especially that she was absolutely having an affair. Now, we kind of
Most
knew that.
definitely.
There were whispers of that. But she was having a long-term affair with her childhood love.
Yeah.
And she had been texting him even like the day before she disappeared about how much she loved him, that he was the only man for her. Why is that pertinent? Because when she went missing, Barry told the police that their marriage was solid, that they were deeply in love, that all was well, that they were just so excited to just live in Colorado and grow old together. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of evidence showing that that is couldn't be further from the truth. In
Yeah.
fact, she texted her sister a couple of days before she died and said that there had been a fair amount of emotional and physical abuse, more than she could even get into at the time, and that she really didn't know what she was going to do.
Mhm.
It just continues to cast doubt on what Barry Morphew has been saying.
Right.
Big surprise, but there's just been so much bad policing here. There's been
It's
really
been
bad
handled really
prosecuting
poorly.
here. Yeah. But the most important thing that we know now is that investigators think that they know where her body is. They're quite sure that they know, but they said it is in a very difficult place to access,
Mm.
and they're still trying to figure out how to access her body.
That would just change everything
Mhm.
because, I mean, first of all, they can't even 100% prove she's dead
Mhm.
to ever really go anywhere with that case.
Yeah.
A case with no body is tough to prove, and it's not that that doesn't happen because it does
Mhm.
happen. Just look at the West Boys case.
Mhm.
But gosh, if they were to able to find her body and to really see how she died and
Mhm.
what forensics may still be present could be really, really important.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
does this mean okay, so they're in Colorado
Mhm.
and they have, mountains and trees and stuff kind of like we do. And
Mhm.
is she like down some really steep ravine or something that people normally can't even traverse? Is that what do
See,
you think? Is that what that
that's what I
means?
think. That's what I think. Here's exactly what the prosecutor said, or the district attorney said. She is in a very difficult spot. We actually have more than just a feeling, and the sheriff's office
Well,
is continuing to look for Mrs. Morphew's body.
sorry, my cats are snarling at each other. I don't know why they're fighting, but they're not happy.
Colleen, I'm guessing that's true that they moved from Colorado or Indiana because he was trying to get her away from this guy. Yeah. Of course, he was married and has 6 kids. I mean, it was an affair on both sides. I don't know that there was really an opening for her to be with him, but her marriage was definitely seriously crumbling. But
Yeah.
yep. Oh,
What
yeah,
did
and
he
Barry
care?
messed with anyone and everyone that said, he was guilty. Oh, yeah, he's filed multiple suits. He's been all
We
over it.
avoided this case for quite a while because he was attacking
Uh-huh.
podcasters, and we were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
not really worth it,
Yeah, he
until
was
he was
super
actually
litigious.
charged.
Yeah.
Right, she
Yeah.
was pretty small. Yeah, did he carry her down
Mhm.
somewhere, or did he throw her body down somewhere? Roll
Right.
her body down somewhere where it's really hard? Because I can think of, like, you drive up in the mountains here, and you see, like, off the side of the hillside down a huge cliff
Mm.
that or like in Yellowstone Park, there are places like that that,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like, physically, how does a human being even go down in there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, and Paul, it's a good point. We complain about justice being slow, but this is what happens when law enforcement rushes the process.
It
Absolutely.
is.
And
They
actually,
did
the
not
sheriff's
have enough
office
evidence to
did not
charge
want
her.
charges to be filed. They
Yeah.
had asked the prosecutor to slow down the pace, and there was a very new prosecutor that acted like they were just going to hang their hat on this case and dove in. They filed charges, and the sheriff said in a statement that they were shocked.
Mhm.
They had no
Well,
idea.
and don't I mean, normally that's like a decision where everyone talks about it and then the prosecutor makes it to file in the sheriff's office, not even know they were doing it. The whole thing is
Mhm.
messed up.
Yeah.
There were a lot of, yeah, allegations that Barry was also having an affair or had had multiple affairs. And Craigie says that the boyfriend was in Michigan. That could well be.
Hmm.
Right, Christy, all these men who think murder is better than divorce, right?
Right.
It's because their egos are so fragile
Hmm.
that they cannot lose in this situation.
Yep.
Right. He did sell the house, got a girlfriend, sort of moved on with his life. I know he's yucky. He is.
Oh
He
man.
just does not, if he's innocent, he comes off way weird for being innocent.
Hmm. Oh, there was the whole story about him, what, shooting at a deer in their yard.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
and all of that weird stuff. I can't remember exactly the context, but lots of things that didn't
With a
track.
handgun.
Yeah.
Like with a handgun. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
okay. You don't really shoot deer with handguns. That's not how that
I will
works.
say though, their girls have stood behind him absolutely like Daybell style. They
They
have
have,
absolutely stood
yes,
behind him, but their mother is missing and they are young. And
right.
I'm sure the thought of losing both parents is terrifying. He
Yeah,
also seems to be excellent at manipulating, and but we don't
he
know.
does.
We don't know, and but I really, God, I really hope that they can find a way to access her if they really do know. Unfortunately, they have said things like this before,
Yeah.
that
And
they
then nothing comes of it.
were really, really close. It was about a year ago they released a statement that they were this close to finding Suzanne, and then they never did. And I think the public has kind of lost hope at this point for good
Right?
reason.
I mean, things have just gone real quiet in that
Mhm.
case.
Yeah. So anyway, there you go. That's what we know.
Right? Home security was wiped for the time frame. I know there's definitely evidence. There is. It just was not quite enough for a case with
Mhm.
no body.
Yeah.
The kids are like in their early 20s, I think, late teens, early 20s.
Yeah. Young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got that. But we'll keep an eye on that because, gosh, what if they're actually right this time? That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Let's
Yep.
see here. So let's talk about another quadruple murder in Idaho. How is this possible? Okay. So this is Major John Kaylor, who murdered his neighbors
Mhm.
after his children and wife had alleged seeing the older teenage son of this family that lived in like a duplex that one was above and one was below, and that the one boy had been masturbating in his window where his kids could see. And you'll remember this. So Idaho has decided not to seek the death penalty in his case, which frankly was kind of surprising,
Yeah.
given the absolute brutality of this case.
Mhm.
He is charged with 4 counts of first degree murder. He told the police he just snapped. I've
Yeah.
heard that before, and it just makes me really angry because it's like,
Mhm.
and so that's not an excuse. Also, no one should have the opportunity or be thinking that it's okay to get that angry. It's not. You
No.
have to be able to take care of yourself and deal with your own emotions without murdering anybody.
Yeah.
Also, we made a mistake with the victims, and this is because this was how this was originally reported, that the
Right.
two adults, Kenna and Kenneth, were the parents, and they're not. Kenna is the mother. Kenneth was actually their grandfather.
Yeah.
Um, and he shot them. The boy that was accused of the masturbation in front of the kids had multiple gunshot wounds. He was shot repeatedly.
Yeah.
Kenna and Kenneth were both um, shot in the temple,
Mhm.
And the younger boy, Aiken, was shot at point blank range. Devin had multiple shots at point blank range. So
He
close that
essentially
there
just
was,
executed the whole family.
yes, he did. Somehow that's how he thought to deal with this. Um, he was shooting so close to them that there was blood and tissue on the pistol.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. This one is really, really scary to me. Someone
Yeah.
that could snap like that.
What's scary to me is that there are people defending him. There are people saying that, well,
Yeah,
the police didn't do anything about it. He didn't have any choice. Indecent exposure is not a death
certainly
penalty.
not a death penalty crime. Also,
It's
what about
also
his innocent family members who didn't do anything?
it's also
Ugh,
alleged indecent exposure. This is
right,
entirely their word. This is
right.
based on the stuff she said on Facebook, and the police had been investigating but hadn't actually made an arrest. So it was
They didn't
still
give him
alleged.
time.
Yeah. When the killer's family are the ones doing all the talking, how much are we taking that to the bank? Well, some people are calling him a hero. Some people are
It's
calling for his
so
immediate release from jail.
gross. He
Yeah.
murdered 4 people in cold blood.
Mhm.
That is not justice at all.
No.
Right, exactly. He was worried about, Paula says he's worried about his daughters seeing a man masturbating, which fair enough,
Sure.
but not worried about them seeing him shoot 2 innocent people in front of them. Yeah, they saw
Yeah.
some of the shooting.
Mhm.
He did that in front of them. I'll tell you,
Yep.
that's going to have lifelong effect, way more than what they
Yeah.
saw with the boy.
Yep.
They
Also,
didn't like the family. They didn't like them living there. They were uncomfortable. It's pretty clear from the Facebook post from his wife that this was a situation they were not happy about
mhm.
from prior to these incidents occurring.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. She had said something along the lines of she's already uncomfortable living here and now this.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also,
So it
she posted
seems
this
there
on
was some bad
Facebook a
blood.
couple of days before the killings.
Yes.
And this is
How to
a
catch a
cartoon
predator.
that or a cartoon, a drawing based on another man who murdered a man who had raped his son.
Yeah. And he's shooting him, blowing his head off.
So clearly, it's hard for me to believe that they hadn't had some conversations.
Right. About this.
I also have to wonder, and as far fetched as this might seem, if they really did think that he would get off on this, that people would look at this as just self defense and just that somehow a jury would never find him guilty, considering what that guy did. Listen, having a guy expose himself to your kids is disgusting. Having
Yeah.
your little girls see a boy or man masturbating in the window is gross. He didn't touch these children.
No.
He didn't assault these children. He didn't do anything to these children besides stand in his own bedroom in front of a window and masturbate while watching them play outside. Now,
Yeah.
is that awful? Of course it is. Is it disgusting? Yes. Should there have been the police called and an involvement? Sure. Absolutely. But the idea that murdering him was in any way acceptable is completely wrong. And the idea of
Completely
murdering
wrong.
his whole family, I just think Idaho didn't have enough death penalty capabilities right now to go for that.
Right. Well, this whole I snapped by telling the police this. Basically, what he's telling them is that this was not premeditated. He didn't plan it. He
Right.
snapped. He grabbed his gun. He shot him. And that's why
Essentially
it's
a
set
crime of
because he's
passion. Yeah.
charged with yeah. They're
Mhm.
this may end up being second-degree murder. I don't know if they're going to change that, if they'll leave it at first degree, but at this
Mhm.
point, it doesn't appear that this was a premeditated event.
Mhm.
But that post of that Facebook image that his wife posted a couple of days before really makes me question if that's
Mhm.
actually true or not,
Right.
or had they discussed this.
Hmm. It's bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. So we will continue to follow that and cover it as it moves now through the court systems. See see what else is going to happen. In the meantime, Katie, what about the Cassidy Rainwater case? We had some big news there.
Yes. Okay. So you guys remember Cassidy Rainwater, or if you don't, I'll bring you up to speed. But Cassidy was murdered a couple of years ago in July 2021. This was that case where the two men were arrested. This is Norton and Phelps that were arrested. She had been staying with them in a cabin
Hmm.
and then had disappeared, and the police found evidence of her demise, pictures and video on one of their phones, and packages of her flesh wrapped and frozen in the freezer that were labeled with the date she died and her initials. Initially created a real fervor, and I'm afraid to say that we probably contributed to it, that there was maybe cannibalism going on, that maybe there were
That might be
other,
more than one victim.
yeah, because they
Yeah.
actually had kind of withheld information for quite a while they did DNA testing on the meat in the freezer because they weren't really sure what was human and what wasn't, and if
Right.
there was more than one human. And then, after these two were arrested, miraculously, mysteriously, the cabin burned to the ground.
Just right out of the blue, guys. I'm sure it was a completely unrelated event.
Yeah. Cassidy had 6 children. Yeah, 6. And some of them were still minors.
Hmm.
And it's a horrible case, an absolutely
Oh, it
horrible
is.
case. But not too long ago, James Phelps entered an Alford plea,
Hmm.
and he was sentenced to life without parole. Well, believe it or not, Timothy Norton has now also pled guilty to first-degree murder charges and has
But it wasn't
also.
an Alfred plea, right? He
No, he
actually
didn't do an
pled
Alford.
guilty.
He pled
No.
guilty. He pled guilty. He told the police all about what his involvement was. He said, "I deserve to die, and I am ready for that. It's not right to take a life. Everybody hates me. I'm a monster of a monster." He says things went sideways and just kind of happened. It seems like I told somebody else once, it just kind of went sideways. The next thing I know, he said that Phelps strangled Cassidy. He was accusing her of stealing some things from him.
Mm.
He said the next thing I know, he was choking her and things were going sideways. If you looked into his eyes, that would have been the last thing you know. I wanted to do was cross him at that point in time. I know he's got a temper. He was not emotional in court. He said he's still numb. He said, maybe later tonight when I go to sleep, I'll cry. You can talk to my kids, you can talk to my exes. Most of my emotions come out when I'm asleep. Okay, well, whatever.
That's creepy.
Yeah. But he was also sentenced to life without parole. And that's it. It's over.
No. Wow.
Yep.
He had kind of always seemed like he was the more submissive party in the situation, that Phelps was the more aggressor,
He always
more the
also has
aggressor.
always struck me as being low IQ.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But things just went sideways and she's dead and they're cutting up her body. Like, I'm sorry. That is a very poor description of what happened.
Right. Because initially he had said that he held her legs down while she was strangled, and then they carried her outside and uh, basically butchered her body on a gantry hook
Mhm.
and then packaged it. I mean, it was as if they were like packaging a deer,
Yeah. Ugh.
processing a deer. Yep.
Well, I'm glad those
And
two pulled
labeling the
her.
wrapped packages. Yeah, cranky.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's always really bothered me that that cabin burned down. And when I've
Mhm.
always wondered who did that.
Yeah.
Now, they had said they were done processing it. And they had also said that some locals had been out there snooping around, out of pure curiosity. This swept their area like you can only imagine, of course. But yeah, it's been a terrible case from the get-go. I am so grateful for Cassidy's family that these two fools either pled Alfred, I don't even care. That sucks. That's a coward's way out, but whatever.
It is.
And then the guilty plea to just end this so that they can at least try to start putting their lives back together.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, calling things going sideways, that's me forgetting I ran out of laundry detergent.
Yeah.
Right. What a weak description of a heinous murder that they
Yeah.
committed. Yeah. Right,
Yep.
forgot to put coffee in the coffee maker. I've done that several times, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not like, whoops, we murdered someone.
Mhm.
What? No.
Or put dinner in the crock pot in the morning and leave for work and come back later that night expecting your house to smell amazing, and it isn't
Have to
because
turn
you
it
never
on.
turned it on. Yeah.
Yeah, been there,
All of
done
those things.
that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about everybody's favorite widow, Corey Richens,
Oh,
because
God.
nobody's favorite widow. So she's the woman from Utah who we now know poisoned her husband, killed him, and then wrote a book about grief and about how she and her sons were getting through his death. And that book went national, and she got all famous for it. And now they're discovering that she actually murdered him. So she's in even more trouble
Mhm.
because Kate Richens Benson, who is representing the estate of Eric, the husband,
Mhm.
filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Corey Richens in Summit County in Utah. The lawsuit is seeking $13 million in damages, as well as all revenue generated from the sales of the children's book that was published a year after Eric's death.
Yeah.
And that, it's a very interesting concept because she seriously profited from his death through that book and the notoriety that it brought her. I don't know how much money she's actually made on the book, but anything that she made on the book is profiting from his death, and you cannot
Yeah.
do that. That's you cannot profit from someone's death. So yeah, something's gotta that money has to go somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kaylin thought about Corey when she saw my Moscow Mule. I know.
Oh right, yes, because
I
she
hate
was
that we shared his
poisoning his
drink.
drinks
Yeah.
with fentanyl. She was
Yeah.
overdosing him on fentanyl. Is what she
Mine
did.
just has gin. It's not that great. I mean, it's greater, really.
Yeah, it
But
is because it's much safer. Are they
it,
going to give that money to the kids? Well, they well should.
right.
Their aunt is fighting very hard for the rest of the family
Mhm.
and for those children and for what they've been through because they've now lost both their parents because she'll go to prison forever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the
And
aunt is such a badass.
she
She's
is.
awesome.
Hmm.
She's been really tough and strong through all of this.
Yeah,
You got to give her mad props.
most definitely. Most definitely. But it is interesting to think, that, yeah, she literally profited from his death with that book.
Yeah.
So gross, right? So sorry for those kids because they're little.
Yep.
This is, oh,
However, I think that his family are going to do everything they can to give these kids a splendid life,
mhm.
and
They
that they'll be
certainly
okay.
are doing everything that they can for them, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they're standing up for him and defending him the way that
Yeah.
they are too. Yeah, sue her for
His family has the kids. Yeah.
yeah, they do. So that's pretty interesting. She seems to just like to piss off everyone. Is
Mm,
what I'm is my impression of her.
mhm.
Let's see, Katie, talk to us about the drownings or the murders in Austin, Texas.
Something wild going on in Austin, Texas right now, and maybe some of our listeners here that live in Texas can give us more context to this area. But this is happening at a place called Lady Bird Lake
Hmm.
near Rainy Street. They have just pulled another body out of that lake, and that makes five. Five men have been pulled from Lady Bird Lake in the last 6 months. And there is getting to be more and more whispers that perhaps there is a serial killer on the prowl. So I guess Lady
Well,
Bird Lake is actually a portion of the Colorado River that runs through downtown Austin.
hmm,
So
yeah,
authorities are like, ah, no, no, we don't have a serial killer. But the public is starting to really wonder if they have a serial killer because this is happening. Yeah.
well, and they just keep finding
Hmm.
more bodies.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yes, Paula, Corey Richens did sue the estate last week to get the house and the money from his business, as if she has any right to that while she's standing trial for his murder. She doesn't.
Mhm.
But yeah, so they turned around and sued her back.
Mhm.
That is correct.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So,
What's it going to take for the authorities to look at this? And maybe they are internally in Austin and they're just not saying.
well, apparently, in searching for trying to figure out what's going on at this lake, they actually uncovered a different murderer who could be labeled a serial killer from some killings that happened there in the 80s. Uh, but they have nothing to do with Lady Bird Lake. So they're still investigating that and trying to figure out what is going on. Some of them seem like maybe accidental drownings. Some of them seem more suspicious than that. But authorities have been pretty quiet and don't act like they really want to say too much about it because, they don't want to scare the public and start, shaking everything up. But it's certainly something to pay attention to. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Well, their initial, statements were that this is just people getting drunk and, you know, full grown adults getting drunk and falling in the lake and drowning. And I'm like,
Oh, sure. Like all these
I
women that
mean,
just wander out into the woods and lay down and die. Okay.
right. Like
Yeah.
maybe that happens sometimes, sure, but like multiple people in a short span of time in the same place, that just does not seem that likely.
Yeah. Yes, Christy, all of the Lady Bird Lake bodies are male between 30 and 45 years of age. I mean, there's
Right.
definitely
Like
a type there. Yeah.
there's a real pattern in the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So interesting.
it is. It's interesting. I don't know where it's going to lead, but yeah, I mean, more and more of a pattern seems to be emerging. So
Hmm.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up with some news out of the Delphi case and Richard
Oh,
Allen.
we do have a tiny bit on Richard Spanvelo, too.
Oh, right. I forgot. Give us Spanvelo.
It's not a lot. Or Marcus, sorry. I knew that was wrong.
Marcus.
It felt wrong. It's very small, but there's a new document out in Spanvelo. This is, of course, is the murder of Cassie Carley. If you guys remember this,
Mhm.
she was his ex that lived with her little child in Florida. And in a handover, she never came back home. And she'd been living with her dad, and she just never came home. And he was really concerned and contacted the authorities. And there was a manhunt for Cassie's body for about a week, and she was finally found buried in the soft dirt inside a barn in Georgia. And as it turned out, her ex had been working on that property ways, just a little while before that. So anyway, blah blah blah. He was arrested. Well, he was finally found and arrested and extradited. And it's been a real back and forth thing because the initial charges were dropped because they were filed by the wrong state. The problem is they don't know what state she was killed in. And so they needed to take it out of the state's hands and move it into a federal jurisdiction. Anyway, we've
Right.
talked about all of this before, but if you haven't been here with us, you might not know. Anyway, so now it's the very long process. He has waived his right to a speedy trial, and they're now saying that his attorneys have applied for a lot of extensions. So the deadline for pretrial motions is now extended to 11/13/23, and he has until then to decide whether or not he wants to accept a plea deal or actually go to trial.
Mm.
So that's all we know, but it's something, that case is moving along. There's been a lot of vicious back and forth in that case, and Marcus is this arrogant, uh, he has a very slappable face. I'll say that. He's
He does, yes. He's high
definitely
on
at the
the
top of the
FOS list
FOS list,
as
yes.
well. Yeah. A very slappable face.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's up with the Cassie Carley case.
So some movement, it's been slow to get through the courts for sure because of all those jurisdictional issues.
Mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
now.
one
Oh,
more
I'm
thing really quick.
sorry. Go
A couple
ahead.
things we're just cramming in. We're also in verdict watch for Scott Peterson.
Oh, yes, the ouch. Not that Scott Peterson, but
No,
the Parkland
school cop
security guard.
trial.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
Yeah.
the jury's been out now for a day or two. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that one's a slam dunk at all. We'll see.
No, and it's kind of a precedent setting kind of case.
Yeah. Hi, Anna. Welcome. It
Yeah,
is.
nice to have you here.
Yeah.
Okay, can I go on to Delphi, or
I
do
won't
you
say
have
another
anything else?
word.
Okay, so you probably know there's been a big document dump in the Delphi murder case in regards to Richard Allen. This comes because this case has been gagged and everything is kept quiet, and
Mhm.
finally the decision has been made that maybe some of this information needs to be shared with the public. And so we have known really hardly anything about what's gone on with Richard Allen, what information they have
Yeah.
from him, those kinds of things. So I'm going to tell you some of the things that are in the document dump. We're not going to go through all of it, but there's some very interesting things. Did admit in April during a phone call to his wife that he was responsible for killing Abby and Libby.
Yeah.
Um, Also, there is evidence revealed that the murder weapon was a knife, that the girls were stabbed.
Yeah, that's new. That's
We've
new
never even known
information.
cause of death in this case.
No.
But he apparently repeatedly said, I did it to his wife on the phone,
Mhm.
and she eventually hung up.
Mhm.
Pretty upsetting situation.
Yeah.
Um, so their deaths were ruled as homicides, wounds caused by a sharp object, most likely a knife.
Yeah.
There were pieces of clothing that belonged to the girls that were missing from the scene.
Mhm. A sock and a pair of underwear?
Yes, as though
Yeah.
maybe some kind of trophy was taken.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, there was a search warrant looking for things that belonged to Alan. They were looking for firearms and knives at his home
Mhm.
in Delphi. Also, electronic devices, clothing, and a specific cell phone.
Mhm.
And they also wanted to search the property that included the outbuildings, a shed, and his car for those
Mhm.
things. See, we haven't even known what the search warrant was looking for, let alone what it found.
Or what the mode of death was. That's something
Right.
they've kept really, really quiet.
Because
Yeah.
there's been all this stuff about a bullet that was found near the bodies and finding the gun that belonged to that bullet, except that the girls weren't shot.
No,
Now
and
that we
and
know.
that's one of the pieces of evidence that is one of the big reasons I've been saying that I think this case is really flimsy,
Right.
because it was an unspent bullet that they said
Hmm.
had markings on it that were significant, or that were potentially from his sigsayer, but
Hmm.
the problem is that those forensics are really easy to poke holes in, and so
Right.
we've been saying if that's all they have, this case is very flimsy.
Right. But it really isn't all they have because that is not even the
Yeah.
murder weapon.
No.
So they
So it makes
did
you really
recover.
wonder, do they have the knife?
Well, they did recover boots, multiple knives, and sweatshirts, the 6 hour, um, multiple cell phones, an iPod, a hard drive laptop, and some other electronics from the house.
Mhm.
So they did go away with knives.
They did. Yeah.
We don't know if it's the knife, but you know,
No. No. However, the confession may very well end up being inadmissible.
right. And this is the thing that we have to remember.
Yeah.
Richard Allen has had a complete meltdown. He's eating all of the papers that his attorneys give him, like literally ingesting them.
Yeah. I
He's
said wetting them and
hallucinating.
eating them.
Yeah, he is hallucinating. He was not stable when he made that confession to his wife. And
Mhm.
you know that the defense is going to go there first. And that's
Right.
really what's going on right now, is that they're trying to determine competency, because
Right.
in that initially where he was being held, he went downhill. I mean, if you've seen pictures of him, he looks like a late stage cancer patient. He looks
My God.
horrible.
Horrible,
They've moved
horrible.
him now, and they're assessing him to determine, is he competent to stand trial.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they are looking at that time frame when that confession was made to his wife
Well, this
about
it
what
was the
else was
same
going on with him.
time. that his attorneys were filing with the courts to get him out of that prison
Yeah.
because of the downhill spiral. And at that time, they said that he was showing symptoms of schizophrenia or other psychosis.
Yes.
And that's when they were, talking about how he was starving himself. He wasn't eating. He wasn't sleeping. He was eating all the papers they were giving him. And, so now everyone's like, oh, they got a confession. They'll be lucky if they
Right.
get to use that confession. This is why we've been saying all along this case feels wrong. And, not that I think that Richard did or didn't do it. I'm still not convinced, to be completely fair. And I know some of you guys think I'm completely insane for that. But there's a lot of things here that don't feel right, that weren't really done right.
They've
And the
got
fact,
to normalize his behavior,
yeah,
really, to be sure.
yeah.
I think that his current state is way beyond malingering.
Oh,
Yeah, right,
yeah.
Christy. He looks like he weighs like he's lost 75 to 100 pounds. He does. He
Oh,
looks like
yeah.
he's not eating at all. He's hallucinating. I mean, there are things that can be faked for a period of time, but you
Mhm.
can't malinger forever. No one can.
No.
And I don't think that it is fake. I do think that he's had a total
Mhm.
break with reality, and they've got to get him back
Yeah.
to reality as they've done with Lori Vallow
Yep.
to know for sure what is really real here.
And I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. I'm just saying that this has all felt very weird and wrong and desperate to finally arrest somebody.
Right.
And it's just really true, Amy. It feels weird because there was nothing and then bam, they found him. It almost feels
Right.
inconvenient. Right. And I'm not saying he did or didn't do it, but there's some things with this case that concern me greatly. And this
Yes.
whole thing with the whole imprisonment thing really, really worries me for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. Partly because his rights were seriously violated
They
in
were.
this. Whether
To
you think
leave
he's
him
guilty or not.
the way he was being housed as though, no one cares because he's been convicted.
Hmm.
But he hasn't been.
Yep.
And he's innocent until proven guilty. And you cannot
Yep.
just, you know, destroy a person psychologically the way that he has been.
Right.
So
Right.
they've
What
got
if
to get
he
some
had
shit right with him
died?
first.
What if
Right.
he had died in that prison and he
And then
hadn't
we
been
would never
convicted?
know.
Right. And then maybe justice would have never been served for
Right.
the girls' families. Like, all of this has been so very wrong and screwed up.
It has. It has. Well, and this case has been so quiet. The police in this case have held everything tightly to the chest. They've finally decided maybe that is not the way to go.
Yeah.
Maybe being more transparent will bring in more witnesses, more information from the public. Duh.
Yeah.
People have literally been begging for information about what their investigation is showing for
Yeah.
years since these girls were killed.
Right.
And, there may be things that people know that they don't know they know because everything's been kept so
Yeah.
secret.
Well, and what if
We,
that confession gets thrown out because he
right,
was crazy when he made it? What if
right,
what
right.
if
It
they were this
sucks.
close and they had a
But there,
confession and they have to throw it out because of
yeah,
the conditions surrounding it? There's so many
because
things here that are just so fucked up.
there are, because you can bet that that's immediately where his defense is going to go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we shall see where this
Yeah.
goes from here. Um, we still don't know about the acted alone or acted with someone else. There's always that
We
question.
don't. We also don't know
Was
if
there
they
someone else
actually
involved?
recovered a murder weapon or if they didn't.
Right. They took
Yeah.
knives from his house. Is one of them the murder weapon? We don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Did they
Right,
find?
Cranky. This is a small place,
Yeah.
rural police force. Yeah, and they've been very committed
Mhm.
to finding
Mhm.
um, this killer. Very committed.
Mhm.
But I don't know. They're keeping it all a big secret. I think has
Mhm.
backfired on them, and it
Mhm.
has made the community doubt them and question their ability to solve this. And so I honestly think it's the right move to unseal some of this
Mhm.
stuff and release it and give
Yeah.
people the opportunity um, to
Mhm.
you know comment. Maybe people know things if they
Yeah.
just knew what the police were thinking or what
You're
they were
looking
looking
for.
for.
Yeah. Anna, it's interesting. She said, "Do either of you have a read on this?" So back when we were still doing public readings, which you may have noticed that we're not doing that anymore because I mean, we haven't really talked very publicly about why we're not doing that anymore. But the reason we're not doing that anymore is because in the true crime slash intuitive world, it got really ugly and gross. And we
Mhm.
discovered people that we would have considered maybe our colleagues doing really inappropriate things, saying really inappropriate things. And we realized that that is not what we wanted to be associated with.
No.
And we'd rather just stick it to true crime and
Mhm.
not not meddle in the other side of it anymore because it just got to be a gross world where we didn't want to be a part of it.
No,
But I
we
will
didn't
tell
want to
you
be
this,
associated
Anna,
with super unethical behavior.
we did read this case. I read this case.
Yeah, you did.
And when I read this case, when Alan was first arrested, I was like, okay, that it matches. I wouldn't say 100% it doesn't, but quite well with what we were saying. And we were saying that the girls were killed with knives.
Yeah, we were.
We did predict that. I think we might have predicted that there was a gun involved as well, that there was
We
kind of
also
both of those
predicted that there were
things.
two killers. There
Yeah,
were
we did
several
predict that
things.
there were two killers. We don't know that answer yet, but at any rate, so we did read it. You can go back
Mhm.
in our archives and find it, but I don't know. I don't know. I worry that this case is in trouble.
I do
I
too,
hope
but
I'm wrong,
some of the information they've shared does give me some hope that they have more than we know.
which
The
they
fact that
probably do. Yeah,
that they're not relying on that gun as murder weapon. Thank
yeah,
God. That's super good news,
yeah, yeah.
that because that had concerned me a ton because it was an unspent bullet. And
Hmm.
that forensics is super questionable about if they can prove what kind of gun it was in or not.
Yeah,
And
that's.
so I'm glad that there are other things that the murder
Mhm.
weapon is actually a knife or a
Yeah.
sharp instrument. We don't know if they have DNA. There's
There's
lots of
never
things we
been a
don't know.
Yeah, there's never been a single word about DNA. I know, Amy, it's really hard to shake Keegan Klein.
It is.
Really
I
hard to shake
agree.
Keegan Klein. I know.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Keegan Klein is currently off, getting convicted of all kinds of other heinous shit.
Mhm.
And, they may um, bring
Mhm.
him in eventually. They're not ruling that out,
Yeah.
but what they've released does not rule it in either. So
Mhm.
we got
Yeah.
some information, not everything.
Mhm.
And, but definitely it is a big move. And I think it's a
Mhm.
move in the right direction. This keeping things a secret from the public, the justice system works for us, you
Yeah.
know? And the people in Indiana, the people in the Delphi area, they have the right to know what the hell
Mhm.
is happening here. They also have the right to be able to contribute, and you can't contribute if you don't know what the hell they're looking for or what they're thinking. So I think it's good. I think all of this is good with Delphi, and we're going to keep seeing good things. But they've got to resolve the concerns around competency and get him in a good headspace before they can move forward, really.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the next big step.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he'll get evaluated by a bunch of different people. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Justice does need to be out in the open and not in the dark.
Yeah.
Justice is for the people,
Yeah.
which means that the people need to know what's happening and need to see it happen. And I think that rural communities, smaller places aren't super used to that. We've seen it with the Daybell case here.
Yeah.
You know, our justice system here is not used to being out in the world and so visible to the public. And
It's
they don't
very
like it,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
but it
it's
really
very
is the way
uncomfortable
that
for
it's
them.
supposed to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. We
It's
still
a
don't know exactly what led them to Richard Allen. That's something we still don't know.
No. Eh, and on that note, it is a mixed bag, of course, because we want juries to be preserved. We want fair trials. However, we are the public. It
Mhm.
definitely, there's definitely a fine line there. Yeah.
There is. It's important,
Yeah.
that there can be a fair jury, but not everybody's interested in crime. I know that. We might
Yeah.
feel like everybody's a true crimer, but that's not actually true.
No, not at all.
And so there are
Yeah.
certainly people that will know very little about a
Yeah.
case like this, just like
Hmm.
anything else.
Yeah.
Right, Diane? Hopefully they will get justice and that their
Right.
families will. They have been through so much.
Right. At the end of the day, that's all I really care about is that justice is served for them and for their families so that they can get some modicum of closure here so that and so that the community can be safer. If it is
Yeah.
Richard Allen, convict him and lock him up.
Yeah.
But if it isn't, find the real
That
killer.
means somebody's still out there.
Yeah. That's the mixed bag. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's everything we've got. And I think it should probably be enough because we are overtime.
We are. Yes.
But we will be back next week with all of our usual content. Our Patreons will be coming out tomorrow for the month. So if you follow us on Patreon, or if you don't, go to Patreon True Crime Squad. Find us there. We do 2 extra shows a month. I'm doing a Menendez Brothers Then and Now for Patreon that I think is going to be interesting because some things have really come to light, some more things coming into question with their case. And so I want to talk about, you know, what the original case was, and then what's come to light since then that might change the way that case was viewed.
It'll change the way you view it, I would imagine. For a
I
lot of
think
you.
so. It's
The press really gave us that case a very certain way, or maybe it was just the prosecution or whatever. But I think we all thought we knew that case, but chances are you really don't.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's true. So that's what my Patreon is going to be this month. So if you want to learn about that, go become a patron over there. And it's a small fee, and it supports us and helps keep us doing what we need to do, because it turns out this stuff's not free.
No.
It helps pay our bills, which is a good thing.
Right? Somebody's got to buy these Moscow mules.
Well, and pay the gas to drive to Lori Vallow's hearings. Come on.
Right? A couple of things. So my Patreon is 6 times that women killed their husbands through their testicles.
You might know that we put some stuff on Patreon that we would not put on YouTube. Some things we choose to be, kind of behind the paywall so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. And this would be one of those cases.
Yes, and a bonus of a time a guy accidentally killed himself through his testicles. Anyway, we'll get there. It'll be a testy episode. I'm just telling you that.
Yes, it will. So check out our Patreon for all of that.
Real quick to answer Pam's question, can Lori have visitors? Lori can have visitors only through, the only in-person visitors she can have is clergy or her attorneys. However, you can put money on her account and request a conversation with her via Telmate, which is the video chat function. I know other people have tried. Justin Lum has tried a few times, and she always accepts his money and then declines the call. That sounds like Lori.
Yes,
however, I have said that once the dust settles with Lori, I am going to try to write her once she's in prison. I actually do want to talk to Lori if possible. She sure makes eye contact with us every time we see her at court.
She sure does, because she doesn't know who we are.
Well, I think she definitely wonders. So, anyway, that's all.
Yeah. Well, with that said, please be sure to like, subscribe, follow, comment, give us a review on Apple or anywhere else that you can. All of those things help us to grow and reach out further into the world, which is what we want to do. And with that, we are the True Crime Squad. Thanks for being here.
Take care.